Greetings, millionaires, multimillionaires, and future millionaires. I'm Lane Beene, a 28-year retired lieutenant colonel, a former F-16 pilot, and successful real estate investor. During the past 15 years, I side-hustled one single-family house into a multi-million-dollar apartment portfolio with close to 700 units and awards along the way that included Fort Worth Property of the Year and National Multifamily Housing Council Renovation of the Year. I achieved this while working full-time for the Air Force, deploying 5 times to the Middle East, and being a dedicated family man. My goal is to share what I learned to help you become a better investor and move up your millionaire status. I'm really excited about today's topic. Last week after our conversation, I thought real carefully about the listening audience, and I wondered, what information can I pass them? What information and important topics would they like to know? And although we've been talking specifically about property details, I kind of backed up by the encouragement of some other sharp-minded people and thought about how individuals like yourself and like the listeners in our audience today can get started into real estate. Or if you've just started with a little bit of seasoned experience, how can you become a better investor? How can you find better investments? So today, I'd like to share my story about how I became a real estate investor and a better investor with the purpose to specifically identify your path to either your first investments or your path to becoming a better investor. So today, my goal is to give you some actionable steps so that you can become a successful investor and a better millionaire. Well, all right. Before we start that, though, I do have a couple of administrative points that I'd like to mention. When I was flying, we used to call this motherhood. It was the administrative part prior to our mission. So there's a couple things that I want to mention to you real briefly, and then we'll get right to our points. The very first is this last week we had a lunch and learn in Fort Worth. And it was really good because it talked about a part of a real estate strategy that a lot of people don't talk about. I've always heard, and I've always mentioned this to you, the listener, that number one, to build your net worth, you need to efficiently place capital in cash-producing assets that increase in value. We know that, and we talk a lot about that. But number two is stage capital in tax-advantaged transactions. We don't talk a lot about that, and that was the point of this week's Lunch and Learn. And we talked about 10 specific strategies. Let me give you an example of that. My very first multifamily purchase had no tax strategy whatsoever. And when we exited that project, I exposed myself, because of capital gains, to a very large capital gain liability. I learned from that, and my second transaction was planned through a 1031, and I was able to defer the tax liability and continue to, again, build wealth. Now, today's topic is not about wealth, and I'm not trying to divert what we're going to talk about, but what I do want to let you know is these opportunities to learn and these opportunities to become a better investor are important, and they're cumulative. Our next Lunch and Learn is going to be October the 16th. That's Wednesday. You can contact me directly for a white paper or a summary of our tax strategy. I'll be glad to send it to you. You can contact me and get on my invitation list for the next event, our next Lunch and Learn, October 16th. Or you can contact me and talk about real estate business, my business, or any other current projects. And let me give you 4 things, and this is going to close up our motherhood portion. You can contact me via email at lane.beene@pilot-legacy.com. That's LANE, BEENE, at that number. Or you can go to our website, pilot-legacy.com, or you can reach me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and my pages are Pilot Property or How to Become a Better Millionaire. Looking forward to talking to you. Okay, that closes our administrative points of order. Hopefully that didn't get us too far off point. Today's podcast and why you're listening, I want to help you become a better real estate investor. Okay, whether that means you are the very first investment into real estate. Maybe you're an experienced investor and you're looking to become better, or you're a passive investor and you want to become a more active investor. How do we do that? And we do that by these things that we're going to talk about. And I'm going to share some of the stories that I did and how I made that transition. All right. The very first thing you need to do is you need to define what kind of investor you want to become. Do you want to be in an active role or do you want to be in a passive role? Because those roles in some ways diverge. One requires a certain area of responsibility and roles, and another requires a different role. And you need to understand those so that you're on track. Do you want to be the team coach or do you want to be a team mate? All right. So kind of in your own mind as we're going through these, think about what role you want to be in. And there's some active lessons learned for both of us. Okay. The very first thing you need to do is define your target. To become a really good investor, you need to have a very focused target. What do I mean by target? Okay, I'm from the aviation community, so targets are very important. We need to hit those consistently. And in the spectrum of real estate, it's your financial goals. Okay, what do you need to achieve in your financial goals? Because if you just have a general idea, you probably aren't going to be satisfied with that. Do you need an income type of strategy or a growth type of strategy? What do I mean? Do you need $50,000 per year income, or do you need to turn $50,000 into $150,000? Those two examples are defining your target. When I left the Air Force, or I left active duty military in 2000, I left with the intent to become a professional commercial pilot. And I had no thought of real estate. However, the events of 9/11 changed my path because after that period, commercial aviation froze all hiring. And I, regardless of my skill set, wasn't going to be hired by a company that wasn't increasing their pilot staffing. At that point, I had to redefine my target like I'm challenging you to do. I recognize the military often is a first career because by the time you're into retirement age for the military, which is in the 40s, that's not enough income to continue your current lifestyle, more than likely. So I had to find another step to my second career. I needed a second career so when I left the military, I would still be able to do that, and I had to define that. I always had an interest in home repair, and I enjoyed the type of carpentry work, and so that kind of led me into real estate to some degree by accident. There was a vacant house in my community that I purchased for $500, and that started my investments in real estate. So you need to define your target, define your financial goals. What is an action step for you? You don't have any real estate activity or investments at all. Define how much and where you need to be at any one point in the future, income or growth. If you're already a seasoned investor and you're trying to improve the qualities of your investment, or if you're a passive investor looking to transition to an active investor where you're leading these, what action steps are define your target, define your goals? One, you need to be clear about what they are, and then you need to be able to communicate that either to the person that's offering you this investment, or you may be offering it to them. So define your goals. The number two thing to become a better investor or to start is identify your assets. And I've kind of broken those down into these four categories: the time, money, your skill sets, or your net worth. So let me talk about each of these and share some examples with you from what I've experienced so you can, one, benefit from my successes and you can avoid the pitfalls that I stepped into over the last 15 years. Number one, your asset and your most valuable resource is your time. How much time do you have to dedicate to real estate investing and to get into your second career if that's what you intend? Well, we never have enough time. I know that. We're always prioritized by different things. We're busy in different points, and I understand that. But you have to dedicate time and commit that to be successful. I built my real estate career and my business completely on the side of my active employment. I was working 50 hours a week in a demanding job, and so I understand the demands of your time. You have to be dedicated, and you have to do that. Nothing comes for free. You get what you build, and you have to dedicate and prioritize that. My primary employment during those 50 hours had zero crossover to real estate investing. But I did have time to read. I had time to study. I had time to learn on free resources like the public library. I had time to listen to podcasts to and from work, back home, and query and develop my knowledge base academically for that. And that's how I used my time. One of the successes that I attribute, or one of the causes of some of the successes that I've had, is that good use of free time or finding time to increase my knowledge in this area. And that was an academic knowledge. So I was able to do that correctly. One of the things about time that I didn't do very well, okay, so make note of this if you're a single family investor looking to transition to multifamily, was I had the concept of DIY, do-it-yourself mentality. And so every step that I was trying to take, I adopted that mentality into multifamily. I'm going to do multifamily like I learned to do single family. Do it yourself, make repairs, market, you're the jack of all trades. But that doesn't work in multifamily because the scope is so much bigger. So don't make the same mistake I did. Hire good people and then follow their advice. Don't hire smart people and tell them what to do. Hire smart people so they can tell you what to do, and try to break that do-it-yourself mentality. If you do that, then you'll make better use of your time and decrease your risk. So identify your time, action steps for you. If you're a new investor, okay, your action steps are very clear. Go to the library, listen to podcasts, utilize your time to try to increase your education. If you're going from a passive investor with the desire to become an active investor, same concept. Use your time, okay, to educate yourself correctly, and you will be surprised at how many small minutes can be put together effectively. Identify your assets. Time we talked about that. Money. A lot of people say, Lane, I can't invest in real estate. I don't have any money. I understand that. Story from Lane. 10 years of active duty service. I served from the time I was commissioned to 91 until 2000, 2001. During that time, I left and I had saved about $14,000 of what I call investable funds. So I started in 2000 or a little before that with only $14,000. Now, that's not a small amount, but it's certainly not significant in light of the project sizes in multifamily. However, I used that money in the purchase of that one single-family project that I talked about. I used that in conjunction with the education and other strategies like I've mentioned, income versus growth, to grow that. What are the action steps for you? Because I know that you can say, I don't have enough money to invest. I just need to wait. Well, I would challenge you, and I would say it's okay to wait, and certainly you want to make good use of your resources. But remember, it's important to start. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And you're never going to have enough money. So I'm challenging you now to set aside some of your income into investable funds so that you can crawl first, walk, run, and then you can accelerate to become a better investor. My first project, like I mentioned, small first, was a $1 million purchase, 23 units in my area of operations in Fort Worth. $1 million is a lot of money, but in the scope of apartment complexes, that's a smaller project. I started small, gained confidence, used the education that I had received in preparation, okay, pooled other investors in a syndication, and we bought a relatively small project. You would be surprised at the good results a little bit of action and a little bit of success can garner for you, and you can turn that money into more money, and you can solicit more investors to join your team as you start showing success. So your action steps for money, okay? Be smart with your budget, okay? Execute your plan successfully, and then share that story with other investors as they come alongside you for project number 2. The third thing for identifying your asset is your skill set. What skills do you have to become a real estate investor? Or what skills do you have to become a better real estate investor? Like all things, skills are honed with practice, with training, and with education. When I started on the very first project, that single family, and even with the very first multifamily, I had no formal investment finance education or training. I wasn't educated at the School of Business. Okay, my school was the military. I have no previous experience in housing. I didn't come up through a construction background. It was a military background. I didn't come up through a property management training on the job, apprenticeship. I had no formal experience in that, but I was a learner. I was a studier. I had learned book knowledge utilizing my time about those skill sets. And so I took that academic knowledge that I had learned from books, podcasts, library resources, and I applied them to practical knowledge. What did I do? I started to solicit information, marketing materials from real estate brokers, from lenders, from the market, asking for the marketing materials. We have a property for sale at 123 Main Street. Can you send me details for that? And I studied those. I practiced underwriting. Underwriting is just a fancy way to say you practiced what is the price that I should pay for this? How do I compute that price? And then I would contact the agent and ask for the open house days, and I would go and tour the property. I was, at that time, unknowingly, I was taking my academic knowledge and training and education, and I was getting some practical experience, seeing what these definitions of words and terms were and applying that to actual properties. So I underwrote and toured about 50 properties before I was ever able to successfully submit an LOI, which is a letter of intent, and a contract for purchase. So you have to not only develop that skill, you have to practice it and train it. Just like a sports team for a Sunday game, they've trained all week in preparation for that game. If you're trying to buy a property next month, then you need to have the type of training this month to prepare you. How do you do that? Like I mentioned before. And so another example of what we talked about, you have to, when you're developing your skills, you have to be resilient. You have to expect to encounter obstacles, and you have to expect in some ways to fail. Okay? I say that because that's a lesson learned. I could tell you failures and things that I could have done better in hindsights this week, and I could go down a calendar list of that. The way to success is not a straight line of continuous progress. It's a crooked line of pigtail curves. You want to fail because that's where you learn the lessons, but those failures are short, quick, and inexpensive. All right? That's the way forward, in Lane's opinion, because you just don't know everything. There's no way you could be expected to, but you are smart, you're intelligent, you're fielding yourself with other professionals that are helping you avoid the catastrophic failures, okay? So that's important to understand. You're going to face obstacles. You're going to face situations that in hindsight, you could have acted differently, but that's just not the case. So move forward and expect to be resilient, certainly in developing your skill set. The last thing for identifying your asset is your network, okay? Who do you know? In the multifamily game, I like to coin two different customers. My customers are my tenants. My clients are my investor groups. Each of them share certain commonalities and similarities in what I'm trying to do and move forward. I need both to be successful, but I handle both and I treat them differently. When I started, I had no network connection whatsoever, and maybe you don't either. That's fine. You can build it. I didn't know anyone in the real estate investment career. You may or may not. Great. If you know somebody, maybe they can help you expand your network, But if you don't, it's your responsibility to reach out to that network individuals who's on your team to build that. How do you do that? How did I do that when I started? Well, for a long time, like I've already mentioned to you, I had that do-it-yourself mentality, and I didn't appreciate the value of network. But as I realized without a successful team, you're not going to move forward, the importance of network became crystal clear. And so I joined a real estate investment group that really helped advance me to putting education and book knowledge into practical knowledge. I suggest you do the same. There's plenty of real estate investment groups in your area or in this area, or you can reach out to other successful investors and ask for them for their recommendation. You can reach out to me. I've already given you my contact information and how you can do that. So what is one of the lessons learned from networking? What can you do as an action step even today? Is start writing a list or make a mental note of the people that you know, your family members, your neighbors, your community, or your business associates who may be interested in real estate investing. Start having conversations with them. What do you think about multifamily? What do you think about the real estate market in our area? That's the way to start building your network so that when you're ready to invest or you're ready to sponsor your own project, then you're going to be able to draw on that. One of the things that's a lesson learned that's really important as you're communicating either as a passive investor to your sponsor or you're the sponsor communicating to your passive investors, that communication is critical. And it's always good to be in front of that communication and set expectations clearly because, like I've mentioned before, you're going to face obstacles. The markets change, properties grow older, people move in and people move out unexpectedly, and you need to be able to identify those expectations and communicate those well. One of my lessons learned is you want to be, if you can bring the topic up, you're in the driver's seat and lay expectations clearly. If the topic's brought to you or expectations are changed, then you're in the murder seat. So be in front of that communication as clearly and as accurately and as timely as you can. All right, so we wrapping up today. We talked real briefly about how you can be a better real estate investor, whether that's a first-time investor or whether you're a seasoned investor trying to become a better investor or get access to better projects. I want to go back to the recap of our admin and encourage you to come out and learn more about real estate, either through connection with me, another real estate group, or one of our training and education events. If you'd like to contact me for more information or an invitation to those, I provided my information in the book, but I'll do it again. We're at pilot-legacy.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Lane Beene. I'm on Facebook, Pilot Properties, or Become a Better Millionaire. Or email me directly, lane.beene@pilot-legacy.com. Here's to you. Thank you for listening and helping you become a better millionaire.